My homage to the gem of the Supreme Buddha. The Buddha is my refuge every day. My homage to the gem of the Supreme Dhamma. The Dhamma is my refuge every day. My homage to the gem of the Supreme Sangha. The Sangha is my refuge every day. My homage to the Supreme Triple Gem. The Triple Gem is my refuge every day. Namo Buddhaya. Meritorious disciples, we are all very fortunate. Why are we so fortunate? We are fortunate because we had the opportunity to be born as human beings during a period of time where people get to hear the Tathagata's Supreme Dhamma. As I'm sure you already know, that the appearance of Tathagatas in this world is very rare. The Supreme Buddha himself teaches that it is very rarely that Supreme Buddhas are born into this world. And similarly, the Supreme Buddha teaches it is very rare to have the opportunity to listen to the Dhamma in this world. And so we are fortunate because at a time like this, we have the opportunity to listen to the noble Dhamma that leads directly to the bliss of Nibbana. We have the opportunity to listen to a Dhamma that helps us to escape from all suffering in this world. Meritorious disciples, since we have gotten this opportunity, we must at least try to form confidence in the Noble Triple Gem in such a way that it is unshakable, unwavering. The Supreme Buddha explains, if a person gains an unshakable confidence about the Supreme Buddha, the Dhamma and the Sangha, then that person is considered a Sotapanna disciple. He is known as a stream entrant. That means he has entered the path to Nibbana. And without a doubt, within 7 lives, within a maximum of 7 lives, that person attains Nibbana. So, meritorious disciples, today we are going to learn a beautiful sutta that helps us to form a pleasant mind, to gain confidence in the Noble Triple Gem, the Buddha, the Dhamma and the Sangha. Today we are going to learn the sutta called Sangarava Sutta, found in the Anguttara Nikaya. Meritorious disciples, during that time, a Brahmin named Sangarava came to see the Blessed One. He came, exchanged greetings with the Blessed One, and he sat to one side. And so sitting on one side, Brahmin Sangarava said to the Blessed One, Master Gautama, we Brahmins do sacrificial offerings and we encourage others to do sacrificial offerings. The Brahmin says, O Master Gautama, now when we do this, both one who himself who does the sacrifice and the one who encourages us and the one who encourages others to do the sacrifice is doing a meritorious practice that extends to many people. So what is Brahmin Sangarava saying? Brahmin Sangarava is saying that as Brahmins, they do sacrificial offerings. Now, meritorious disciples, what are sacrificial offerings? In their religion, they believe that making sacrifices, that is, offerings like fire and sacrificial offerings where they gather thousands of animals and they kill those animals and they offer the blood to the God, and they think doing that helps them to gain merit. Of course, we know that's not the way to gain merit, but as Brahmins, that's their ideology. So this Brahmin is saying when they do sacrifices and when they help others to do sacrifices or sacrificial offerings, they gain merit. Not only do they gain merit themselves, others gain merit as well. And so this Brahmin is saying, but Bhante, one who leaves his family and goes forth from the household life with homelessness only tames himself. Now what is he saying? When a person decides to renounce the household life to become a monk or a nun, this Brahmin is saying when they go forth from household life into homelessness, they only tame themselves. They only calm themselves and leads to Nibbana only himself. In such a case, he engages in a meritorious practice that extends to only one person, that is, one based on going forth. So he's saying that when a person becomes disenchanted and renounces a household life to become a monk, he only tames himself. He only attains Nibbana himself, and he does not help others to gain merit. And so when Brahmin Sangarava said this, of course our great teacher, the Supreme Buddha, replied to Brahmin Sangarava in this way. The Supreme Buddha explains, well then, Brahmin, I will question you about this matter, and you can answer as you see right. And so the Supreme Buddha asks, Brahmin Sangarava, what do you think? Here, a Tathagata arises in the world, an Arahant, a person who has eradicated desire, hatred and delusion, perfectly enlightened, Samma Sambuddho, accomplished in true knowledge and conduct, Vijjacharana Sampanno, fortunate, that is sublime, Sugato, know of the world, Lokavidu. As you know, the Supreme Buddha understood the human world, the hell world, the heavenly world, the Brahma world. The Supreme Buddha is the knower of all worlds, the unsurpassed trainer of persons to be tamed, Anguttara Purisa Dhammasarati, Sattha Deva Manusanang, the teacher of devas and humans, and Buddha, an enlightened one who teaches the Dhamma out of compassion to others, and Bhagava, the Blessed One. The Supreme Buddha here says, the Supreme Buddha becomes enlightened and he instructs in this way. The Blessed One explains, a Supreme Buddha explains, come, this is the path, this is the way. Practicing in accordance with this, I have realized for myself with direct knowledge the true purpose of the spiritual life, that is Nibbana. And I make it known to others. So what is the Supreme Buddha saying? The Blessed One is saying, the Supreme Buddha, having attained enlightenment, having understood the reality of this life with direct knowledge, make it known to others the path to attaining enlightenment. The Supreme Buddha explains, as the Blessed One, I say, come, you too can practice this. And practicing in accordance with this, you too will realize for yourselves with direct knowledge the unsurpassed Nibbana, the purpose of spiritual life, and you'll be able to dwell within it. Thus, the teacher teaches this Dhamma and others practice accordingly. So the Supreme Buddha here is saying, the Blessed One becomes a Supreme Buddha, becomes enlightened, and teaches the Dhamma to others. and when the Supreme Buddha teaches the Dhamma to others, others practice the Dhamma. The Blessed One explains, O Brahmin, there are many hundreds, many thousands, many hundreds of thousands who do so. That is, there are hundreds of thousands of disciples who practice the Dhamma that the Supreme Buddha is teaching. And so the Blessed One is asking Brahmin Sangarava, Brahmin, what do you think? When this is the case, is that act of going forth a meritorious practice that extends to only one person or to many people? So what is the Supreme Buddha asking here? The Supreme Buddha explained how the Blessed One became enlightened and how when he teaches the Dhamma to others, others listen to that Dhamma, and when they listen to that Dhamma, they follow the Dhamma, and when they follow the Dhamma, they can attain Nibbana themselves. So the Supreme Buddha is asking, when this is the case, then is that act of going forth, that is that act of becoming a monk, that act of ordination, a meritorious practice that extends to one person or to many people? Now, meritorious disciples, here the Supreme Buddha explains a very important point. Here the Supreme Buddha is explaining the difference between a Buddha and a disciple. In one of the suttas, the Supreme Buddha clearly explains the difference between the Supreme Buddha and the disciple. The Blessed One asks, O bhikkhus, I am an arhat, and so are you. So of course at that time the Blessed One is addressing a group of arhats. So the Supreme Buddha is asking, I am an arhat and so are you. Then what's the difference between you and I? And at that time the Blessed One explains, O bhikkhus, I have discovered the undiscovered way. So the Supreme Buddha explains, I am the person who discovered the undiscovered way to Nibbana. And after the Supreme Buddha found the Eightfold Path and taught it to others, only thereafter did they follow the Eightfold Path. And by following what they were taught, they were able to attain Nibbana. So the difference between the Buddha and the disciples is that the Blessed One finds the path to Nibbana on his own, unguided, and teaches that Dhamma to others so that others can understand and realize the truth about this world. And so the Supreme Buddha asks in this sutta from Brahmin Sangarava, when this is the case, is that meritorious practice only extend to one person or many? And so Brahmin Sangarava replies, Venerable Sir, Master Gotama, when that's the case, then this is a meritorious practice that extends to many people, that is one based on going forth. So he comes to agree after listening to the Blessed One that when a person goes forth from homely life to homelessness, not only does he benefit himself, but he also benefits others. So he agrees. Now, meritorious disciples, we know even today this is a criticism that a lot of ordained people get. A lot of people complain or criticize, saying when people goes forth from homely life to homelessness, that is when they get ordained, they are not helping the society. They are being selfish. This complaint or this criticism went to the Supreme Buddha as well. Even today people say things like the Supreme Buddha left the family. He left his loving wife and his loving son without considering their needs. But if you really take a look at this sutta, you can see how going forth and becoming a monk, how the Supreme Buddha helped thousands, hundreds of thousands of people to understand and realize the truth in this world. And so when the Supreme Buddha said this, Brahmin Sangarava agreed, and he said that going forth is indeed a meritorious practice that extends to many people. And so at this time, Venerable Ananda was sitting nearby, and he asked Brahmin Sangarava, of these two practices, that is, now here, of these two practices mean going forth and doing sacrifices. Those are the two different practices Venerable Ananda is referring to here. So Venerable Ananda is asking, of these two practices, Brahmin, which appeals to you more as being simpler? That is, Venerable Ananda is asking, which practice appeals to you more? The one that's very simple, the one that's less harmful, or the one that has the most fruits and benefits? So what is Venerable Ananda asking? Venerable Ananda is asking, of the two practices, that is, of going forth from homely life to homelessness and becoming ordained, and doing sacrifices, from those two practices, which one do you find to be more appealing to you? The one that's very simple and less harmful, or the one that bears more fruit and benefits? Now, of course, the Supreme Buddha's path, that is, becoming ordained and teaching the Dhamma to others, is what's more fruitful and beneficial. And so when Venerable Ananda asked this question from Brahmin Sangarava replies, Venerable Ananda, I consider Master Gautama and Master Ananda worthy of veneration and praise. Now what did he say? He said, I consider Master Gautama and Venerable Ananda as worthy of veneration and praise. He didn't answer the question. And for the second time, Venerable Ananda asked Brahmin Sangarava, Brahmin, I'm not asking you whom you consider worthy of veneration and praise. I'm asking you, which of those two practices appeals to you the most? The one that's simple and less harmful, or the one that's more fruitful and beneficial? And again, for the second time, Brahmin Sangarava replied, I consider Master Gautama and Master Ananda worthy of veneration and praise. He didn't answer the question that Venerable Ananda was asking. Now here, by asking this question, Venerable Ananda is trying to get across the point that going forth from homely life to homelessness, and by having tamed oneself, having attained parinibbana oneself, and by teaching the Dhamma to others, that person is doing a practice that's more fruitful and beneficial to many people. Now, Venerable Ananda is trying to get across this point, but Brahmin Sangarava is not answering the question properly. He's avoiding it. So for the second time, he didn't answer the question. And then for the third time, Venerable Ananda asked this question, and again, he didn't answer. Brahmin Sangarava didn't answer. Now, of course, the Blessed One is listening to this. The Blessed One thinks, even for a third time, the Brahmin Sangarava, on being asked a very legitimate question by Venerable Ananda, is not answering the question. So let me release him. So the Blessed One thought this, and the Supreme Buddha addressed Brahmin Sangarava and said, Brahmin Sangarava, what conversation arose today among the king's retinue when they assembled and were sitting in the royal palace? So the Supreme Buddha is turning the conversation to a different direction to try to get across the point. So the Supreme Buddha asked from Brahmin Sangarava what kind of a conversation they had in the king's retinue when they got together in the royal palace. And so Brahmin Sangarava replied, O Bhante, this is what they were talking about. They said, formerly there were very fewer bhikkhus, but there were a lot of bhikkhus who played superhuman wonders of psychic potency. That is, in the past, there were only a few bhikkhus, but they were able to perform miraculous phenomena, miraculous potencies, psychic potencies. But now there are more bhikkhus, but fewer who display superhuman wonders of psychic potency. This was the conversation that arose today among the king's retinue. And so, when Brahmin Sangarava said this, the Supreme Buddha explained an amazing Dhamma. The Supreme Buddha explains, O Brahmin, there are these three kinds of marvels or wonders. What did the Supreme Buddha say? There are three kinds of marvels or wonders. Meritorious disciples, in Pali, these miraculous phenomena or wonders are known as patihara. And so here the Supreme Buddha is explaining the three different types of wonders there are in this world. With the Supreme Buddha's wisdom, the Supreme Buddha saw that there are these three kinds of marvels or wonders in this world. The first one is the wonder of psychic potency. The second one is the wonder of mind reading. And the third one is the wonder of instruction. Now, what are these wonders that the Supreme Buddha is talking about here? The Blessed One explains that wonders, in Pali it's known as patihara. And so, when a person develops four things, when a person develops or practices four things known as the basis for spiritual powers, they're able to attain these wonders or marvels. The Supreme Buddha explains when a person practices the four bases of spiritual power, and those four are desire, energy, determination, and investigation. So when those four are practiced, the Supreme Buddha explains, that person can attain different wonders or different marvels, display different marvels. Now here the Supreme Buddha explains, when a person has the desire to attain Nibbana and he gains a samadhi, when he gains a concentration, that is, when he attains jhana, absorptive levels, with that desire to attaining Nibbana, that person develops his mind to a high level where he is able to perform these marvels or wonders. And when a person puts forth an effort to attain Nibbana, and based on that effort, when he attains a samadhi, when he concentrates his mind, and develops his mind, he is able to attain these wonders. And similarly, with determination to attain Nibbana, when he gains a concentration, a samadhi, he can display these wonders. And finally, the fourth one was investigation. That is, through investigation, he engages in wise consideration, he contemplates with the intention of attaining Nibbana, and through that he gains a samadhi, concentrates his mind, and as a result, when he practices these four things, he is able to attain these patihari or wonders or marvels. So now the Supreme Buddha explains what these three types of marvels or wonders are to Brahmin Sangarava. The Supreme Buddha asks, and what Brahmin is the wonder of psychic potency? So the first wonder is the wonder of psychic potency. The Blessed One explains what psychic potency is. The Supreme Buddha explains, here a bhikkhu wields the various kinds of psychic potencies. Having been one, he becomes many. Having been many, he becomes one. Now here the Supreme Buddha is explaining, when that person attains a high concentrative level and develops his mind, he can create He can be a single person and he can manifest himself as thousands of people, and being thousands of people, he can become a single person. This is known as psychic powers or psychic potency. And having been many, he becomes one, and he can appear and disappear. He can go unhindered through a wall, through ramparts, or through mountains. Such a person can go through solid objects without any problem. They can go through a mountain as going through space. He can dive in and out of earth as though it were water. He can walk on water without sinking, as though it were earth. And he can become seated, cross-legged, and travel in space like a bird. The Blessed One explains, such a person who has attained this psychic potency can touch and stroke the moon and sun, so powerful and mighty. So the Supreme Buddha explained the first wonder of psychic potency. The Supreme Buddha explained the first wonder, which is the wonder of psychic potency. And the Blessed One explains the second potency. And what Brahmin is the wonder of mind reading. There is one who by means of some clue declares, you're thinking this, this is what you're thinking. Your mind is in such and such state. And even if he makes many declarations, they are exactly so and not otherwise. So the Supreme Buddha is explaining the second wonder is the wonder of mind reading. A person can read the thoughts of others. So the first way of doing this, the Supreme Buddha explains, is a person looks at another person and with clues, he says, you're thinking this now. These are the thoughts that's in your mind now. The Blessed One explains that's the first way of mind reading. And then the Blessed One explains to Brahmin Sangarava, again, someone does not declare on the basis of a clue. So he doesn't read the mind based on clues, but rather he hears the sounds of people, spirits, or deities. And then he declares, your thought is thus, you're thinking this, this is what you're thinking now. Your mind is in such and such a state. And even if he makes many declarations, they're exactly so and not otherwise. And so the Supreme Buddha explains the second way of mind reading. The Supreme Buddha explains some people hear things from human beings or deities or other spirits. And through that, they get to know the thoughts or the minds of other people. And when they get to hear or know about others' mind through either human beings or deities or other spiritual powers, then they go and tell that person, you're thinking this, now you're thinking this, these are your thoughts. And what they say is exactly true. It does not change. They are exactly so and not otherwise. So that's the second way of reading other people's mind. And so the Supreme Buddha explains the third way of reading other people's minds. The Blessed One explains the third way of reading other people's mind is by listening to the sound of diffusion of thoughts as one is thinking and examining a matter. Now that means, meritorious disciples, when we are thinking inside our head, when we think over and over again, that's what it was, examination. When there's thought and examination before we say something, that emits a certain sound. But of course, the ordinary person cannot hear it. But a person who has a very concentrative mind is able to catch this sound that's emitted when we are thinking. So the Supreme Buddha explains, some people, when they have concentrative minds, are able to hear this sound of diffusion from thinking. from thought and examination. And so when they hear the sound, they're able to say, you're thinking this now. This is what you're thinking now. This is the state of your mind now. And so in that way, they're able to read other people's minds. That's the third way of reading. And then the Blessed One explains the fourth way of reading. The Supreme Buddha explains, a person attains a concentrative level without thought and examination. Now here, the Blessed One is referring to the second jhana and above. So in the second jhana, when you read the second absorptive level of concentration, there is no thought and examination. That means you don't have to think and think over again the object of meditation. And so when a person attains this second level of concentration, that person is able to read other people's minds easily. The Supreme Buddha explains, when that person attains this concentrative level, that person can say, now you're thinking this. This is what you're thinking now. This is the state of your mind now. And the declarations he makes is exactly so and not otherwise. The Blessed One explains, this is called the wonder of mind reading. So there are 4 different ways of mind reading. And it's a marvel or a wonder, the Supreme Buddha explains. And then the Blessed One explains the third type of wonder. Now we talked about 2 wonders so far. What's the first one? Yes. The first one is Iddhipatiharya, that is psychic powers, displaying psychic powers. That's the first marvel. The second marvel is reading other people's mind. The Blessed One explains, and what Brahmin is the wonder of instruction. So the third wonder is the wonder of instruction. The Blessed One explains, here someone instructs others in this way. Think in this way and not in that way. Attend to this, not to that. Abandon this and dwell in that. This is called the wonder of instruction. So the Supreme Buddha explains what the wonder of instruction is. Wonder of instruction means teaching others, letting other people know what is right, what is wrong. Now, as you know, the Supreme Buddha teaches us, practice this, do not practice this. The Blessed One explains, cultivate wholesome things, do not cultivate unwholesome things. The Supreme Buddha explains, practice the Eightfold Path and abandon the wrong paths. Once the Supreme Buddha explains to a group of monks, O bhikkhus, if you are thinking, then think about the 4 Noble Truths. Do not think about those unnecessary things. If you're thinking, think this is the noble truth of suffering. Think this is the cause of suffering. Think this is the cessation of suffering. Think this is the path leading to the cessation of suffering. So the Supreme Buddha explains, teaches as to what is right and what is wrong. The Blessed One explains the true path to Nibbana and explains how to avoid other paths that lead to hell, that lead to bad worlds, bad destinations. So in this way, the Supreme Buddha uses this wonder of instruction to guide all beings in this world, to help them to attain Nibbana. So the Supreme Buddha explained this third wonder, the wonder of instruction, and explained, these Brahmin are the 3 kinds of wonders. Of these 3 kinds of wonders, which appeals to you as the most excellent and sublime? So the Supreme Buddha asked a question from Brahmin Sangarava. The Blessed One asked, what appeals to you the most? And so Brahmin Sangarava explains, O Bhante, Master Gautama, now the first marvel or the first wonder, which is the ability to perform psychic powers, that is, to appear and disappear, to be one and become many, to become many and to become one, and to travel in the sky, to travel in the sky like a bird. This Brahmin Sangarava is explaining, "Oh Bhante, this first marvel, Bhante, seems to me like a magical trick." So now what did Brahmin Sangarava say? This first one seems to him, this first marvel or wonder seems to him like a magical trick. And then he says, "Bhante, the second one that you taught me, that is the wonder of mind reading, also seems to me like a magical trick." So now Brahmin Sangarava said that the first and the second types of wonder seems to him like a magical trick. And then Brahmin Sangarava says, "O Bhante, Master Gautama, when someone performs this wonder by which he instructs others, that is, when he says, think in this way and not in that way, reflect in this way, do not reflect in that way, abandon this and enter and dwell in that, this wonder appeals to me as the most excellent and sublime of those three wonders." So now he's saying that the wonder of instructions is what appeals to him the most. He says, this wonder is the most excellent and sublime of those three wonders. And then Brahmin Sangarava says, "Oh Bhante, it is astounding and amazing, Master Gautama, how well this has been said. How well this has been said by Master Gautama." He says, "We consider Master Gautama to be one who can perform all these three wonders. For Master Gautama can display psychic powers, can read other people's minds through the four ways. And Master Gautama displays the wonder of instruction." And when Brahmin Sangarava said this, the Supreme Buddha replied saying, "Surely Brahmin, you matched what I said directly back to me, didn't you?" The Supreme Buddha explains, "Nevertheless, I will tell you, I do wield these various kinds of psychic potencies. I am able to exercise mastery with the body as far as the Brahma world. I am capable of displaying these psychic powers. I also encompasses the ability to read other people's mind through the four ways. I'm able to say, this person's mental activities are so disposed that immediately afterwards, this is what he's going to think. In this way, I'm able to read other people's minds. And so I do have the second wonder." And the Blessed One explains, "And I do instruct others, saying, think in this way, do not think in that way. I do instruct others, saying, practice this, do not practice that. Abandon this, and enter and dwell in that. I do instruct others in this way." So the Supreme Buddha here explains to Brahmin Sangarava that indeed the Supreme Buddha does hold these three types of wonders. At this time, Brahmin Sangarava was very happy, and so he asked the Supreme Buddha, "But Master Gautama, is there even one other bhikkhu apart from you who can perform these three wonders?" So what is he asking? He's asking whether there's at least another single bhikkhu who can perform these three wonders. Because remember, at the beginning, Brahmin Sangarava said that becoming ordained only benefits oneself. Only one person is benefited when they become ordained. So what did the Supreme Buddha say? The Blessed One explains, there isn't only just one bhikkhu or two bhikkhus. There are more than thousands of bhikkhus who can perform these wonders. So there are bhikkhus in this dispensation who can perform all these three wonders. Now, of course, Brahmin Sangarava was very surprised to hear this. So he asked, "But Bhante, where are those bhikkhus presently living at?" What did he ask? He wanted to know where those bhikkhus are. Because remember, Because remember, in the royal palace, the conversation that occurred was that in the past there were very few bhikkhus, but they were all able to display these psychic powers. That's what they were talking about. And they said, presently there are many bhikkhus, but a lot of them cannot display psychic powers. So Brahmin Sangarava was surprised to hear that there are hundreds of bhikkhus who has these marvels and wonders. He was surprised to hear that there are hundreds of bhikkhus who can perform these 3 wonders. And so he wanted to know where they're living. And so when he asked this from the Supreme Buddha, the Blessed One explains, O Brahmin, those bhikkhus live right here in this Sangha of bhikkhus. Now, at this time, meritorious disciples, Brahmin Sangarava was so happy. He said, "Oh, excellent Master Gautama, excellent." He was so happy. And he took refuge in the Noble Triple Gem. He formed a pleasant mind about the Supreme Buddha, about the Supreme Dhamma, and the Noble Sangha, and he took refuge in the Noble Triple Gem. And he said, "Let Master Gautama consider me as a lay follower who from today has gone for refuge for life." Now, meritorious disciples, this is an excellent sutta that helps us to form a pleasant mind about the Supreme Buddha, about the Dhamma and the Sangha. This is an excellent sutta that teaches us the amazing qualities of the Sangha. This is the Sangha that we take refuge in, the Noble Sangha, who is considered supatipanna, that is, they are practicing the path to Nibbana, to eradicate desire, hatred and delusion. And through practicing that path, by developing the basis for spiritual powers, these bhikkhus have attained mastery of the mind. They have developed the mind, and they have developed the ability to perform these marvels and wonders. This is an excellent sutta that helps us to perform a pleasant mind about the amazing abilities of the Sangha. And not only that, it helps us to understand the Supreme Buddha's knowledge, the Supreme Buddha's vast knowledge. The Blessed One knew everything there is to know in this world, and developed his mind to the highest level, attained all these powers, all these marvels, and taught others the path to attaining these marvels. Not only that, not just attain marvels, the Supreme Buddha explained the path to attaining Nibbana. Now, meritorious disciples, although bhikkhus in the dispensation are able to perform these marvels, these wonders, the Supreme Buddha didn't praise this. The Supreme Buddha didn't praise the first 2 marvels. That is, the first marvel is the ability to display psychic powers, and the second one is the marvel or the wonder of reading other people's minds. The Supreme Buddha didn't praise this. Why is that? Now remember, when the Supreme Buddha asked Brahmin Sangarava, of these 3 marvels, which one appealed to him the most, what did Brahmin Sangarava say? He said, "The first 2, Bhante, seems to me like a magical trick." Because at a first glance it does seem very illusionary. And so the Supreme Buddha explained in one sutta, if a person gets to know about these marvels, if he doesn't have a confidence in the Supreme Buddha, the Dhamma and the Sangha, then he is going to think that these monks who are performing these marvels are doing so by learning magical tricks. What are they going to think? They're going to think that these marvels are performed by doing magical tricks. As a result, the Supreme Buddha didn't praise displaying psychic powers, didn't praise reading other people's minds. What the Supreme Buddha praised was the 3rd marvel, that is the marvel of instruction. So in this way, meritorious disciples, in this sutta, we can form a pleasant mind about the Supreme Buddha, about the Noble Dhamma as well as the noble Sangha. And if a person can form an unshakable confidence in the Supreme Buddha, the Dhamma and the Sangha, then that person is able to become a Sotapanna disciple, a stream entrant. And when he perfects his virtue, that means when he observes the precepts, when he perfects his virtue, then he is able to escape from this samsaric life. He is able to escape from samsara within a maximum of 7 lives. So meritorious disciples, we are fortunate to have the opportunity to listen to such amazing Dhamma. And when we listen to the Dhamma, our first goal must be to form a pleasant mind about the Buddha, Dhamma and the Sangha. Because that pleasant mind is what helps us to develop this path further. So meritorious disciples, I bless you. May you have the opportunity to listen to more and more Dhamma. And by listening to that Dhamma, may you have the opportunity to engage in wise consideration and form a pleasant mind about the Supreme Buddha's amazing qualities, about the qualities of the Dhamma and the qualities of the Sangha. And may that pleasant mind help you to attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana in this Gautama Supreme Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Namo Buddhaya.